Okay, the last topic we're going to cover is straight ahead animating versus pose to pose animating. These are two different methods and approaches to animating a scene. A straight ahead is basically where you're starting off, um, with your character and you have an action. In this case, let's say it's a punch, um, and you animate basically straight ahead. So you start with your character, um, selecting all the controls, press S to save a keyframe, and then say move a couple frames forward. Now maybe kind of leans forward a little bit as an anticipation for it, and then again let's select everything, saving a key, and then he starts to kind of have him pause there a little bit. And then he starts to come back. So we go select all, save a key. The reason why we select all is that when we adjust timing on these keyframes, it keeps everything in order and neatly. That way, your body parts don't get out of sync with one another at this stage, and it's really important, I think, to do that. Now, there's really no right way or wrong way. This is just the way that I do it. And a lot of other animators do it this way to try to keep things in order, because animating can be very very difficult when you're trying to manage all these keyframes on all of these different controllers. So he's going to start coming back. His hand's going to start coming into a fist. We'll start bringing this one. So this is very much like stop motion animation, right? You click the foot starts to slide back. You pose out your maquette, and then you click a frame of the camera. Make sure we're selecting everything, seeing everything. And there's no, it's not really planned out. You're just kind of going with kind of going with the flow here. Head, neck, starting to look forward. Arms kind of coming back. So that would be, then you kind of continue in that way until you actually build out the motion for the punch. Now the benefit of this is, the common belief is that when you animate straight ahead, the animation tends to have more vitality to it, because you're you kind of have a thought and you're kind of going with it and you're discovering things as you're moving things along. Whereas pose to pose, and we'll go over that in just a second, tends to be not quite as the animation doesn't have quite the vitality and energy as straight ahead, but it tends to be a lot easier to work with, and you tend to get, for me anyway, you tend to be a lot more productive. And again, it's personal preference. Most animators I know use pose to pose. Some do straight ahead. Some do a combination of the two. So really, the combination of the two is probably the best way to go. And again, it depends on, and it depends a lot on, what you're animating. I find, action sequences, pose to pose makes a lot of sense to me. Sometimes more subtle stuff, when there's not a lot of big pose changes, straight ahead can be better in that scenario. So again, it really depends on you as an animator and what makes sense to you. Um, so now if we're thinking about, pose to pose, and I had mentioned this before, you're going to go find some reference and start taking those poses from your reference and start laying out. So basically, pose to pose is you find reference of an action, either your own reference or found reference, and you start breaking it down to the fewest amount of story poses that you can to describe the action. Um, One way to do that is, depending on how many poses you have, start taking them out. And if the action still holds, then you didn't need that pose. And you keep doing that until you take one out, and then all of a sudden, okay, that action isn't reading anymore, and that is a pose that you needed. Um, most actions require like three storytelling poses. So for a punch, we'd start with, let's say, the anticipation pose where he's winding up. I'm going to tilt him, and I'm going to use these controls to get him back. And he takes this further step back. Now, with him not having any neck, it's really hard to get any kind of control over his face without it collapsing into his jacket there. Um, so let's give him a nice wide. Gonna do some damage with this haymaker here. Get his knees out. Let's zoom into his hand. See if we can get a fist going here. Let's select all of his fingers. Oh, for crying out loud. There we go. Rotation. Oh, I missed his pinky. All right, now let's get the second part of those fingers. Get them bent along with the pinky. And then we'll rotate these guys. Now, because of the texture, I'm having a hard time really seeing what's going on with his hand. So I'm going to go back to gray shaded. You can see the fist is a little wonky here. And ideally, I don't think I can, but I would have liked to have control over those other bones to try to get his fist a little tighter. And make, if you want to know what a good fist looks like, you've got one right at the end of your arm. Use it as reference. Look at your fist, see how the fingers relate to one another. See where they're compressed, see where the force is coming from. I'm probably forcing this a little bit in a way it doesn't really want to go. Make a fist a lot of times that the last two fingers tend to roll up pretty tightly on themselves. Thumb in here. Okay, it's gonna have to do. We'll bring this one out a little bit more. All right, time to switch to my tablet. I typically go from swap from using a mouse to a tablet when my hand starts getting sore. Why is that saying Alt? I don't know. Um, I can turn this on smooth mode. If I turn off the rep mesh, that might help. Get a little bit better view of the hand. But I really can't get these, I can't squish these things together like I would want to. So I would probably go back and talk to the rigger the rigger and see if that would be something we could do, um, so I can get a proper fist. A lot of times in games, there's a lot of restrictions, for memory size and animation, in basically all parts of the game. So memory has a limited budget. All right. And you can see how much time I'm spending on getting a pose right, and it's amazing how much time you can spend on poses. Even little variations can make a big difference, and really, the better the animation, typically the more time was spent on posing, and really working on each pose to get it to tell the best story and have the best design to that pose. Okay, so I'm gonna put this bad boy back on rough, less smoothing, so it's faster. Um, and then we can turn on my pick mask for curves only. And I didn't select all. Save a key. And again, we want to look at it from the back. How's it looking? This is where the player is going to see this animation. What can we do to make it stand out a little bit more? All right. So, like we did in the last one, let's just see how far we can push this guy. We're going to rotate that back and then add the rotation in the spine. One of the things about balance, to test if your character's in balance, look where his head is in relationship to the weight-bearing foot. Usually if the head is over that foot, then that pose is in balance. And maybe we'll twist the torso, the hips that way, and then we'll get a little twist here in the arms. Or bring the hand out, that fist up. Again, so say that's your first anticipation pose. And again, like I had said before, a lot of times we don't have that luxury to have anticipation, only because it adds more time to the animation, and you want to hit that When the player hits the button for an attack, you want the attack to be pretty immediate, and not have it take, an extraordinary long period of time, because they're not going to feel like the gameplay is very responsive. Bring this arm back that way so it feels like it's going to come around more. So then there's the anticipation pose, and then we want to go a few frames more, and we're going to select all, and then we want the kind of the contact follow through pose. So let's start off pretty much at 0, because what that does is it tends to give you a cleaner animation, and you won't get any weird rotation issues. So if he's coming back here with his foot, and he's going to come forward with it. Let's select these guys. If I'm on world mode, I'm holding down the W translate key, going to world, so these things are going to move in the same axis together. We can roll that foot a little bit. And wait a second. Oh, I'm grabbing the wrong tool. Wrong thingy. Looking for the clavicle. There it is. I don't want to stretch that as far. Now you got to be careful too, because you don't want your animation to distort the textures too much or get something looking bad, which can very easily happen if you're not paying attention to what you're doing. And then we got some fist action in there. And now you can flip through your drawings. There, now we got the fist. So basically what I just did was I selected all the joints with a mel command. I went to the frame where it had the fist. I middle mouse clicked, dragged to where I wanted the pose to be, and hit the S key to save the key on that frame. This pose looks a little off balance. I want to get his weight evenly distributed over those feet. Maybe it doesn't come quite so far forward. Maybe this foot should be more. I pivoted on the side a little bit there. I'm based on the angle of the swing, it looked like it would come across this way. So let's kind of raise that up a little bit. Have it more look like it's coming around. As opposed to coming down too much. You bring it up here. He's a little guy. And let's get the hips down and a little bit back, more like that. That's why it's really important, to really look at your pose from all angles to make sure it's working. Because sometimes you'll see something at a different angle, like, oh, that doesn't really, the weight's not there, or whatever the case may be, and then you can have the opportunity to change it. His guts really drop in there. All right, so there you go. There's our 3 poses to really describe this punch. Again, that's might be a little bit too low. All right, let's flip. Drawings from a few different angles. I'm looking at the trajectory of that punch, if that's working the way I want it to. I actually would take this as their breakdown pose here. Bring it higher up in the air. We'll actually bring it back. So he's really leading, with his hips and his, torso to really feel that force kind of coming down. It kind of describes it a little bit better. And let's go in here. We're going to select everything, key it, and then just make sure we have keys on everything. So now if we play it, it's going to play super fast, right? So going back on why I'm keying everything on the same frame, because now what I want to do is I want to start playing with the timing a little bit. Maybe I want this, maybe this is like a finishing punch or a special move where it has a massive amount of damage. So it'll play a little bit longer. We can actually get a little anticipation in there. So what I want to do is add some in-betweens in here to slow this down. And then I want them to maybe hold this pose a little bit. I'm going to middle mouse click. Save the key so he kind of comes back, holds it, and then bam, then he flies through that punch. Now you can see we're slowing down that beginning bit and powering through the hit, which is helps to give that feeling of force and speed. And now I can do this all very easily and quickly and cleanly, and not worry about having keys on the arm being left behind, or there wasn't a key at that frame, so it's screwing up the animation. So this is a quick way to be able to cleanly and smoothly modify your timing on everything. And then maybe on this frame, we actually want to bring them up. So he's really putting his all into this hit. That's where his foot is coming up and forward. Let's make sure we've got a key on everything. So what we could do here is we could add some in-betweens here as well. And then we can hold this pose a little bit for a beat. And then he comes down. So it's really, you're setting up this up in the air beat where it's just before about to bring the hammer down. And let's get it more in balance. And again, we're kind of colliding through that gut. Lift it up a little bit. There we go. So he's really getting up there. We'll have him get right up on his toe. Do a toe roll. So he's way up there. Maybe try to get to a little bit straighter. Just weight just a tad forward because he's going to be coming down. You want that weight to be right. Otherwise the whole thing looks off. And smack. Now that I adjusted that, these frames, select all. We're going to copy that pose to there. And then we're going to have to basically adjust these guys to match. So it feels like he's coming straight down. So now you can kind of feel that little pause. You know, there's that wind up, and then all right, so now we'll go back, drop this back to about there. Now we play it back. The beat is more at the top of that arc. So there you go. There, that's pretty much how you would break something down, pose to pose. You're breaking down an action to its most basic poses, and you start flushing it out. And you start modifying the timing until you get, the timing that you're happy with. And then you're doing the same thing. You start breaking up these poses. Okay, going from here to here. How do I want the in between, or I'm sorry, the breakdown pose, which would be the exact middle pose? So I want to favor, one pose more than another, or do I want to have them power into that? I could basically select all. You could take this pose here, middle mouse click, have it on frame 2. So you're getting more of a cushion or an ease into this pose here. And then maybe I can even delete this guy. So it's generating some nice in-betweens. So now see how it's already starting to flesh out a little bit. But, oops. That foot, we want to have that like it's kind of coming back already. I want to kind of have it up off the ground a little bit. So it feels like a step. And then we can have the toe roll come forward here. And some foot twist to get it up. So that's feeling more like a step. And then maybe here we'll also lift him up in the air a little bit so he's getting the weight off of, when you take your foot off the ground, your weight's going to shift over to the foot that is bearing the weight, so it's able to come off. So now we get a little bit of that in there. And now Let's figure out what we want to do. Here, the foot's probably still going to be on the ground. Maybe it's, starting to roll off that toe. And twist. Roll a little bit more. And then maybe roll the toe. No, well, maybe a little bit. And then we bring this back just a little bit so we're not overextending that leg quite too much. So then in here, let's kind of bring this back a little bit. Bring the arm back a little. So it's got a little movement in here. It's not completely dead. And same with the foot. And then maybe with the back too, same kind of thing. We'll bam. And we'd really want that weight to just hit hard. So he's going to overshoot really far down there. And then come back up. Middle mouse clicking, dragging to get that. Let's make sure we're selecting all. Setting a keyframe, setting a keyframe. And see now if we scrub it here, we need to get this body moving as well. Let's kind of move this back this way so it's starting to come through. It is a little bit already there, so I'm going to actually push this back just a tad more. Bam. You can feel that. Now I'm just focusing, what I want the hips to do at that, that contact pose where he's really coming through on that punch. They're probably going to come down, but the force is also coming forward. So we're probably going to want that to come forward as well as down, and then continue to come forward. So if you kind of flip this a little bit, you can see the path it's doing. Wham, wham. It's almost like a foot stomp and a punch. And then here, same thing. We're going to overshoot. We're going to twist this a little bit more, and then the body as well to get some extra whack out of that. And then the arm is going to continue to follow through on this. Now you can see I have it following through too much because it's kind of popping at the end there. So I actually think I want to bring this up here. That's feeling a little bit better. Get it from the front. Now it's still feeling a little the angle here, oops, versus the angle down there seems a little off. So I might want to bring it down, since it ended up being more of a kind of downward punch. And then I can kind of come up. And then you continue to flesh it out. And I actually might, instead of having it start to come back here, I may have it continue to twist through. Just have the body kind of pop. Alrighty, and then I would continue to, break this down more. I'd give it a little bit more settle time at the end of the punch, and then I'd have him go back to his idle pose. You can select all here, and then middle mouse drag, let's say right here, save. And then he's starting to go back to idle. But just putting that in there so I can get a sense of timing. And let's see, want him to hold that pose for a little bit longer before he goes back to idle. He's going back to idle pretty quickly, but usually that's what you want. Typically don't want to take a ton of time for him to get back to idle. So I'm going to keep that foot there. Have him get back about there. So he gets his foot back. So I'm working out the footwork here. Nice. So here, body's going to be on that foot that's got the weight. And then it's gonna, once it's on that foot makes his right foot makes that move, his weight's gonna shift over on top of that, so his other foot can move. All right. Then I would work this out. Then I would continue to go through this thing. You can see the foot back here is doing some weird stuff. Let's get the foot here, like that. So that's a matter of continuing to build and refine. A lot of times once I get the basic action in, I like to take the hip controller and see what needs work. You can see here as he's coming back, there's no movement at all in the body. So I want to get the get that in there. Now when you look at it from behind, it looks like his whole body's moving and not just his torso. And then here, maybe we're not doing so much translation on X. Gonna come down and maybe, so at this point I might take the curve for the Y, add a keyframe here and favor that pose. So everything right now is on linear. That way I'm not getting any overshoots or anything I don't want. And then here, I probably want him to overshoot a little bit and then settle back down. And then when he's translating forward, maybe not quite so much. And as he stands, he starts to come up. You can see that arc as I'm flipping through here that's going through the body. At it from the top. You can't even see the punch because it's playing back so fast. Because there's nothing happening right here. You're not even seeing the arc get really described on that punch. So we might want to add another in-between in here. So we can really see this arm coming through its arc. Maybe it's out a little bit more like this. And you could really, yeah, I think that's reading a lot better now. The torso needs to be still pretty rough, or the hips, I mean, they're coming through here. I probably want to add some more in-betweens in here too, because it resolves pretty slowly. Yeah, so the end here, it's feeling a little too bouncy and a little bit too fast. It's not resolving softly, or smoothly, I mean. But it's getting there. We'll get it. All right, let's keep on polishing this bad boy up. We'll take it all the way to completion.